Second draft, which I think is hard. Did you look at it?
No. Came in over the weekend.
But brought Chloe home, she is home for the
Exciting.
break, yeah.
I just found out my daughter got into grad school.
Yay.
University of Denver.
Awesome.
Oh, is that where she's headed now?
Yeah.
She did the outdoor stuff.
She did after at UNH.
Yeah.
Thought she wanted to do like upper town
Yeah.
type, but. Learning interview process.
Okay. And not quite the extreme of up or down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
So,
of course.
but yeah,
Sure.
just found out.
Nice.
Like fine, there's no.
Yeah, I mean, there's no time, it's not.
No, I already said.
I just shouldn't be fine.
I don't think there's gonna be anything, like that. I was asking the secretary, I was like, anything, and I'm like, yeah,
I didn't make the understanding.
so just walk us through where we are.
I will say, like, when we do. Let's have a workshop to, take a look at public hearing. Yeah, so I discovered a couple things on the buffer and fault.
Oh,
So then maybe changes too, and that, because me, and then it goes into IB.
Tim will share his screen through Zoom, yeah, this time we can go there.
Yeah, he can.
yeah.
But,
If you, yeah.
I just gave an invitation to the
but
webinar.
just so you know, but we'll have that opportunity to make your last.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's what I did.
Did you really?
Way too much.
Yeah.
I think those,
And I froze it.
I froze it, and I wrote about the incorrect.
To use the.
Because I scoured that pretty well. But it does freeze okay.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she's putting in ID now.
It was good, it was really good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was super easy, it kind of overflowed on the stove.
Yeah, when things
I
start popping.
didn't pay attention,
Oh, okay.
and it was fun, it was good, I'm gonna start doing that from now on.
Yeah. I went through a similar thing.
They did.
I know.
Since then,
So I
I
have
started
that
doing
same
it.
Yeah,
presentation that I did for you guys. I'll go through it, probably relatively quickly because we already did, but. Up to the.
You're invited, right? You're invited to the webinar.
Yeah, so you want me to probably share it that way?
And you have UH camera.
Ben, how are you?
Nice to see you. Sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah,
just getting all these
reached
things on top
Yeah,
of
mine
me.
seems fine.
No,
I'm like, I just need to date the time.
yeah, no, I know, I mean,
It's
when you're trying to squeeze stuff in, I get it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mixed all of them.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Well, I guess it wouldn't.
Tim, I just sent you an invitation to the webinar.
Okay.
So when you start your presentation here, log into it and we'll share your screen so that it gets in the recording. You will hear again.
Oh.
And someone else.
Yes, he'll be back for lunch.
Yeah.
So it's,
Someone can sit
I
there
don't
for a while.
think so.
Um,
He's flying back.
where you can be wherever you like to be. What's your preference? Sure, why don't you sit? Yep, and then I will want to hook you up.
Yeah, smart.
And then you go on, see if we can get that.
All right.
Log on the webinar, share your screen.
Positive.
So,
I don't have a problem. You're gonna want, you got one.
Yeah. I, the first year I was there, never.
Did you get the invite from me?
I got a driver.
You ran.
I can't justify it.
Yeah.
But I could get it done in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I guess.
Now, share your screen with your friends.
Are they gonna
Just set up a little. Oh, yeah.
So no, I have 1500.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. It's only.
Steve might have an update.
But now, you know, it's not there.
Sorry.
Met
I didn't know I had to
panelists.
speak here.
Oh.
Hey, did you tell me? Oh,
So
really?
I walked in around.
I walked in, I saw Steve.
Oh, it's 1500.
No, like Brad.
Oh, yeah, right.
Steve,
I like my 20 cents. My smuckers were fine, but I was starting to walk around.
Yeah, this is where it's, something.
I don't.
We'll see.
Tim, I'm in front of you, panelists.
Limited window. That was.
So pop share screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jordan, no, I'm the same.
So,
Yeah, he's in the national community. And, he must be. High five.
That's a good size.
No, he is. Well.
Yeah.
Fire. That was a big mistake.
good.
Right back,
Okay,
Oh, good job.
we get the projector working, Tim.
Do you want to
Progress.
rest?
Oh, right, I think.
Can you share screen now? Perfect. Hey. Progress. I'm gonna go mute. You gotta mute you. And this is what's gonna be.
Oh, really?
But everyone's.
There you go. And it's,
That's August.
Hey, you know, Amy, we're gonna do the same thing for you.
Okay.
On the scripture.
So.
Yes. Just the bottom part, see the bottom part of it.
Mine took a while.
There you go, you can see it.
Okay.
Echo. Echo tonight's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. $24 too.
Oh,
The one that took it down.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mine took a
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah, mine took a
Oh,
while.
there you go. This one's good. Okay. Are you expecting anybody on?
Steve and John are supposed to both be coming, so I'm assuming.
Oh, look at that, reading that just starts. Yeah, see, it's a little thing saying. What did they use for a name? See, it's recorded. All right, it's progress. That's what I'm nervous about. You had that experience.
Yes.
But I did it the same way. Also, did it the same way. In theory, I'm supposed to learn from my mistakes. But theory. I do, and I did exactly the same way. But it was a problem. Ready? That's it.
All right, I think we will, we'll get this close, so we'll be good from here. We'll get started with the meeting at 6:01. And we have going on. Public input, 1 of 2. Does anyone from the public have anything to say? When you approach, can you press the button green? Yep. On the mic, perfect. And introduce yourself.
To the very end, it's this little tab. Oh, this little tab. And there you go. Bingo, you nailed it.
Thank you.
Kenny Blaze Zimmerman, I'm in Amherst. After starting to come to these meetings over the Carl situation, you're probably gonna get sick of seeing me, but I'll probably try to keep showing up. First, I want to thank you all to the extent, I don't know obviously what happens behind the closed doors, but to the extent Carl's back in the classroom and you all had any role in that, I greatly appreciate it, and I hope people will turn up Wednesday for the holiday concert. I also hope, and the 2 things I want to say tonight is, this doesn't necessarily alleviate my concerns that when I talked to the school and I had people approach me, and I had a lot of people approach me, saying the teachers are scared, the staff are scared, it's not a great environment. And so I'm really hoping you all will do some investigation into why this process took 8 weeks and look at some of the other turnover that we've had and ask those questions. Because you're allowed to ask those questions. I understand you're the trier if they come to you, if there's a termination hearing, but you're allowed to ask for a proffer of proof. Why is it that we're doing this? Why is it that we're doing that? Which gets me to tonight's agenda item, the revocation of policies GBK and GBKR. I'm a little unclear why they're being revoked when, as far as I know, as far as I can tell from the minutes at least, and if I'm wrong, someone please correct me, the new policies are not yet in place. And it seems to me the revocation ought to happen once you know what the replacement is. The proposed GBKR, I am really concerned with because it cuts this board out. And the proposal, the process as I understand it currently is that you work up through the process, but this board is the final complaint for folks coming from Souhegan. And the new policy, the one I read at least, ends that and makes it a fireable offense if someone doesn't follow the policy as it's set out, which is terrible. If someone has a problem with our superintendent, and I'm not meaning to call him out particularly in this one, but he is the top person. So who do you go to if the top person is the person you have an issue with? So I'd ask you seriously to look at that. I know the reason given was something along the lines of this way back when it first came up at the SAU level. We don't want the board's time to be all consumed dealing with personnel matters. And I would say one of two things is happening. If there are a ton of cases coming through that process to you, and you all are hearing fourth level appeals through the GBKR policy, there is a much, much bigger problem than even I thought existed. And if you're not, then why does it have to be changed? So that was all I wanted to raise tonight, and maybe you all have thought about these things, but I didn't want to wait till the end for the public session, just in case. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your input. Does anyone else from the public have anything this? Come on.
Hi. I'm Carl. With that, I just want to thank Mike and you guys for bringing all that supplies here. Great to see you in person, and it's awesome to hear the music coming out again. So thank you.
Thank you for your input. Anybody else? Okay, so we will move on to the next thing, and Mr. Chamberlain, do you have anything on the COVID metrics?
Sure, just to provide an update, we got, as of today on the dashboard, we have 15 school cases, 1.9% of the school cases by population. There are 4, let's see, there are active, 419 active cases in the community. Test positive rate is 14.3. The vaccination rate for the town is 57.7. Obviously, Souhegan, everyone here is available for vaccine.
Awesome, thank you. I did notice coming in the school last week, the number of students who seem to start wearing masks. I noticed they must be, making some choices. So it's good to see that they have those choices to make. Next on the agenda, Tim Control. We have a presentation on the personal success plan that he's working on the freshman.
Thank you. Is it okay for me to be seated while I'm presenting?
You're doing great. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Oh. I already messed it up.
Good job. Good job. Yeah, go into.
I'm encouraged to see Rolf here because he's always helping us.
I'll go look for another issue.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, I think I got the system now. We're not sure if you agree with that. All right. So very carefully count the. Well, thanks everyone for the opportunity to be here and talk about some of the work that we're doing with what was implemented with 9th grade. A little bit, I'd say maybe a soft rollout. I don't know if that's too strong a word for it at the 10th grade level. I think bottom line, we've introduced the language of personalized success planning with some of the work that we're doing with students here at Souhegan. And so I think I'm going to jump into this first slide, and I think to some degree this is me reflecting probably some of the intention behind some of this work back to you all, and I think my understanding of it comes through conversations I've had this year with Mike, and John Harry, and Dina, and others, just about kind of what we're aiming to do with some of this work. So with regard to personalized success planning, what we're hoping to do is create a cohesive system of personalized planning that engages each student's unique gifts, passions, and intentions. And I think, kind of digging out a little bit, what I mean by that is when a student moves through Souhegan High School, we do a lot to support them in terms of kind of coming in as a 9th grader and then getting to what their ultimate goal is. And the goal with kind of framing it as personalized success planning and looking at how we do that work is we want to make sure that it feels interconnected, it feels like the work that we're doing, it relates to one another, and it doesn't feel like a series of not connected activities that from a student's perspective might not make sense as they're kind of, moving through Souhegan High School. Another goal of personalized success planning is to facilitate increased collaboration amongst the various stakeholders. So by that I mean parents, advisors, counselors, teachers, in supporting each student in their development. And I guess the way to kind of think of that would be, right, like, rather than conversations, happening between an advisor and a student or a counselor and a student, and like, any understanding of kind of what a student's intentions are living between those two individuals, the goal here would be to put that kind of, those intentions into the cloud so that other folks that work here at Souhegan and supporting students can benefit from that knowledge of kind of what a student's intentions are and help support them in their journey through Souhegan. And then finally, of course, like, student outcomes is at the forefront of what we're doing. So we want to help students understand the path to and support the achievement of their kind of first choice post high school experience of whatever it is that they would like to see themselves doing, they envision themselves doing after they leave here. We want this cohesive system to be setting them up to getting there, to understand the steps that would be along the way, and doing our best that we can to support the achievement of the goals as they define them. And I think it's important to kind of stress that this is like not a school counseling thing, this is a Souhegan High School thing. And in talking with students about this work, we've identified a number of kind of essential questions, and if you kind of take a look at these are kind of woven into the fabric of a lot of what we do at Souhegan, right? So kind of first and foremost, who am I? What's out there for me? What are my goals, and how do I get myself there? I mean, that's really kind of the intent behind all of the work and the relationship behind all of the work that we're doing with the personalized success planning process. So beginning with the 9th grade, we've already, like I said, kind of begun implementing this. I can kind of walk you through some of the various activities that are planned throughout this school year. So students arrive in September, kind of try to capture a snapshot of that, kind of where they were at with their thinking and their transition to high school. Ask them to do a questionnaire, which we call the first year profile, that acted as a precursor to a conversation that students would have with me as their 9th grade counselor, which we call, kind of the first year interview. And the goal there is really kind of like, I mean, this year it's a little different than past years where I'm focused completely on the 9th grade experience. And the goal is to really kind of get to know students as quickly as possible. So that way I'm able to kind of help support them in their journey right out of the gate. So the fall, I've been having a lot of conversations with students about just sort of, what their roots are, here in the community, and what their interests are, and some of their preliminary goals coming into high school, as well as just trying to understand a little bit more about their, kind of middle school experience and their transition to high school overall. And at the beginning, end of November, right when we came back from the Thanksgiving break, we engaged in career exploration, specifically with 9th grade, looking at helping them identify some of their innate strengths, as well as looking at their interests and how those might pertain to career goals. Now, the timing of these activities is deliberate, so that the career exploration, we always do that each year ahead of course selection, so that students learn something about what they might like to engage in after Souhegan, to have the opportunity to maybe act on that by taking advantages of opportunities that might be there for them. So, but with this particularly, we also kind of tied it in with the Career and Training Expo, which we had on December 8th. We were able to kind of help prepare students to take full advantage of that as well by doing some thinking about career interests ahead of time. In January, I'll be working with students to orient them to the concept of a high school transfer, so they can kind of understand, how their journey through high school is recorded, how that might, be something that they could use to their advantage, later on down the road, and just kind of helping to demystify a little bit how that process works. And then, of course, that will proceed getting into conversations about course selection for your planning. And so we'll introduce the introduce the program of studies, introduce the course selection process with students, but we'll be getting pretty into the weeds with kind of four-year planning, with advisors having a role to play with that, as well as having follow-up conversations with students with regard to finalizing their course selections, as well as talking with them about their four-year plan and how that connects to their overall path to high school. And then we'll conclude, it doesn't really conclude because this is kind of an ongoing process, but the final kind of activity of the year, we'll engage in some goal setting this spring. Now, each of the items that you can see marked with an asterisk, like those are pieces that we are going to capture as part of kind of the personalized success planning process. So that way that information is accessible to others that work with students. So students, after doing the in-class work regarding strengths and career interests, students completed a form in Power School, sent the communication to parents the kind of beginning of the following week about how they could access that information, and basically it kind of captured some of that in-class work, shared some information about student strengths, some of their career interests, and kind of what their kind of tentative future goals might be at this stage of the game, at this kind of early junction in their school career. When we get to the four-year planning process, similarly, students will kind of capture that, and that will be information that will be accessible to kind of the parent, to review, teachers to review, advisors to be able to kind of take a look at a student's vision of how they intend to spend their time throughout high school, as well as identifying any key experiences that will be important for them to have during high school to help set them up for their future goal. And so this is information that once it's submitted into Power School, it's not like it's closed. They can always go back to it. In fact, they're encouraged to go back to it, and they can adjust it at any point in time. And we will certainly, with students, review the information and the pieces of their personalized success plan each year that they're in high school. I guess I'd quickly kind of back up, so. As far as the vision, 10th grade, some of these pieces would continue to look the same. There would still be a career exploration component. Students would review their transcript in January. Timing wise, this will all kind of be the same. Goal setting may be replaced a little bit with, obviously, we have kind of the Division I roundtable at the end of the year in 10th grade, and then of course, by 11th grade, this will kind of get a lot more. It'll probably look a little different because we'll be getting a lot more into the kind of how do I get myself there, the central question of really kind of getting down into the planning of how students would begin to execute their plans. So you might be feeling like this feels like a lot. This might feel like a lot to throw at students all at once. And so, well, of course, it's not all at once, kind of broken out in a series of activities, but I just want to kind of clarify some of the themes that we emphasize with students, that I've been emphasizing with students as I've been talking with them. First off, everyone's in a different place regarding their readiness to plan for their future, and just kind of normalizing that that's okay. I mean, there are students that aren't going to figure it out until after they leave here, but we want to kind of help put students in the position to be able to make decisions, equip them with the tools that they're going to need to make the decisions when they're ready to make those decisions. So we're not kind of trying to add stress, but we're giving them opportunities to think about some of these things and trying to equip them with some tools that will be helpful for them. And then finally, whether or not they, decide, what exactly it is they want to do while they're here, or, in their freshman year, some of them have pretty clear ideas on it already. Some of them may be seniors, some of them, after they leave here. I think the fact of the matter is that all students can benefit if they're tentatively thinking about something, from us being able to get some experiences out in front of them that are going to help them kind of test those ideas out and kick the tires on those things a little bit. So really, that's what we're hoping to do by asking them to, capture some of what they're thinking so that we can share it to the teachers. And so just some avenues for continued development, for this work. I've been in touch with Andy, who, is pretty, invested in the Division I process, and we're working together. But I definitely think that as we progress forward, we're going to look to how can we more fully integrate this work into the Division I process. We're having some initial conversations about integrating it into the Division I process, but I think it's really, we want to make sure it's really hand in hand. Similarly, Jeannie Sturgis, she's kind of oversees the committee with regard to the post-grad plan, which is the junior graduation requirement. And we've had some, conversations about kind of working with what we have now with the post-grad plan, but understanding how this works with 9th grade, and that by the time this 9th grade gets to 11th grade, the post-grad plan is going to probably need to look different, and maybe even people want different language for how we describe the post-grad plan. So that's kind of continued development, continued work in progress. I think a big avenue for development is strengthening work-based learning opportunities. One thing that we can do here with really kind of capturing this data with regards to students' intentions is be pretty targeted about some of the experiences that we plan for students, and whether that means having like a career breakfast or symposiums that are targeted to specific interest areas. We know who to get that information to, and we also be able to lean on some of the the anchoring adults and support people in those students' lives. So kind of personalize some of those invitations and let them know that we think it would be really good for them to take in some of those things. One of the things I'm working with Galen on, we're kind of, right now, as far as the information that goes into Power School, it can be viewed as the form that the student actually filled out. We're creating fields in Power School, so that way there, teachers can have access to it, and kind of right when they're clicking on a student's backpack, and they'll be able to kind of click on that field and see this information. But kind of an avenue for even kind of further development would be kind of maybe at the end of the year, getting to the point where we could have almost like a report card where this is a synopsis of the personalized success plan that we've engaged in, and kind of what came up for your students this year, so that parents can kind of see that benefit from that information in a really kind of clear user-friendly format. And then of course I think it's important to I know that this is kind of a district-wide initiative to understand what's going on at the middle school level, so that we can, kind of when students are coming in the door in 9th grade, not reinvent the wheel, kind of just, take out right where they left off. I think that's a big strength of what we're doing too, is when students get a new counselor or a new advisor moving into 10th grade, they're able to hit the ground running with some knowledge about, each student that they're going to work with, and understand a little bit more about how to support them. So that's the extent of what I intended to share with folks. We welcome any questions that people might have.
All right, let's open up for questions, comments.
We have 6.
We have 6.
You go one at a time.
Why don't you go one, and then here we'll go.
Sure. Tim, thanks a lot. It's a great start. It's really nice to see things moving on this. My comments, please take them as constructive, and maybe to help some ideas to help me to move forward as you continue this great work. I'll maybe to start out, your plan starts at 9th grade, and I'm wondering if part of the vision, maybe with Steve's help, as we bridge between the middle school and high school, to push some of the concepts down even into the middle school. For example, when you start talking about goals, and I'm super pleased to hear you touch on student goals, it might be difficult for students to even understand what is a SMART goal for channel M, and how to develop one, and how to develop the metrics for achievement, so that the goals are real, the goals are measurable, the goals, once they're succeeded, it's time to make a new goal. And I'm not sure where that education step comes in, but it might be helpful to start that conversation in the middle school. So when you come into the high school and you start laying out your future, you can really hit the ground running from day one. That's comment number one.
Thank you for coming, Tim. I don't feel that students are absent from the process, but your presentation did not list students as a stakeholder. And I just want to make sure that, you know, student voice, and students advocating for themselves, and it's always been extremely important here, and I'd like to see that continue.
Laura, the kids fill out the forms with the counselor. The first 4 steps are students that are involved in the process in a one-on-one meeting with Tim Petrucci.
No, I just meant the presentations that the stakeholders listed: parents, advisors, counselors, and teachers. So it's just kind of the message.
I know, let's be careful about the wordsmith, an employee that is giving a presentation, you know?
Sure. And actually, my first one took out 2 off my list, so. And in the interview in 9th grade sounds perfect. I started conversations with students, Mike was saying, as Laura was recognizing. It occurs to me that it might be, I'm not sure how that conversation goes, so it'd be interesting to see how, maybe after you do it a little bit, and what your feedback is, but what came into my mind is, at that point in their education career, they won't know what they don't know. So maybe just take that with a grain of salt. If they don't know what the opportunities are, they haven't done a career development, that's comes a little bit later. So maybe that interview needs to be refreshed on some regular basis as they get more tools at their disposal, more knowledge and awareness of things. And in terms of opportunities, I'm wondering, the timeline stopped in the spring, which kind of makes sense, that's the school year, but there's this great time in the summer where goals can be achieved if they had been set kind of leaving school. So, and that might be VLAX or some type of extended learning opportunity or something completely independent of the school system, that the system could at least make the students and the parents aware that there's opportunities to advance in math, or to broaden your skills, or try something new. So maybe that something to consider as you continue to develop the program. And maybe it's inherent in this, but this notion of a follow-up on goals, and maybe this connects to continually interview. And I like the idea of putting it in Power School so so-called stakeholders can access it and see it, and then have communications themselves and be independent of a system, but more of a diluted thing. Maybe it's the parents who are connecting with them one day, and maybe it's the advisor, or maybe it's the teacher, or so on. And then finally, I wonder if you've taken some leverage from like our special education programs and the IEP process. A lot of this documentation and identification of, hey, you met your goals, but sometimes it might be you didn't meet the goals, and maybe there's a support that we need, not a formal IEP or anything like that, but an exploration of where the challenges might be, just a foreshadowing that not everyone is always going to meet the goals. And so the question is, what do you do to lift them up and help them get back on the right track? Thanks for taking that in.
I might like you to kind of respond or just.
Sure, please do. Please do.
So, I think like how I envision it, is with this goal setting in that would occur in the spring, that would be a great opportunity coming right into the fall for advisors to do a one-on-one with the student. And it kind of like, just like I kind of walked into the, you know, my first year interview with students with them having kind of done that profile, all of this work would be sort of fodder for that conversation, you know, for a one-on-one with an advisor kind of right out of the gate in the fall. And I think it would really facilitate them hitting the ground running of like, how can I help you get, you know, this year as your advisor get to where you're going. And, you know, I think that the goal here would be, you know, in some instances with this, you know, these goal setting conversations with the spring, absolutely personalizing it. You know, what can we, you know, what can we do this summer to maybe get started on that? Is there a timeline we can associate with some of these goals? And then the same thing when the advisor picks it up in the fall. You know, how can we personalize this? What's actionable right now, and how can we support you?
My other comment was collaborating with the 8th grade. I noticed my daughter, who's junior, she's missing one English class of graduating this year as a junior with an extra scholar. So it's not just that she has enough credits to graduate, but you know, with a pretty robust degree. Is there any way, I mean, obviously she'll be here next year, she likes Souhegan very much, but is there any way to explain that as a pathway to an 8th grader, where you have, now they get credit for math in the middle school and foreign language in the middle school? For high school credit for that, is there any way to communicate or work with students to let them have that as a pathway?
Sure, like that's the opportunity to graduate early or accelerate their path.
Yeah.
Which absolutely, there's no question that we can connect, and as you're absolutely right, the state law requires that credits are awarded in 8th grade at the same competencies as the secondary or high school level. So sure, that may, for some kids, that might be a great pathway, and how that we can counsel them early and see where they are. That's a great pathway.
Anybody else? George?
Sure, I just wanted to thank you for sharing the PSP with us. There's obviously a lot of detailed information that goes along with it. You seem like you're very knowledgeable, and it seems like you really care about it. So thank you for sharing it.
Tim and Mike, I appreciate all the effort that you're putting in. I hope that the easy accessibility to this through Power School enables and actually to impact the class and the instruction, that we can connect the content with their dreams, aspirations, and future, so we can really make education come alive. And that's what Tim and I have talked about in Mike and I, that hopefully that we can personalize it in a way to give choice for students in classes, that they can research and connect their personalized, their plan with the content of the standards. And that mesh, I think, brings education so exciting and so engaging for youngsters. So I hope it's long term, but I hope it's also that teachers avail themselves of all this knowledge about the youngsters, that they can connect their standards and their course curriculum with what the students want to do in the future. If we can focus on that partnership, I think education just becomes so much more exciting and engaging. So long term, it's a 4-year plan, but I hope that teachers use this information to plan engaging, exciting, magnificent lessons.
Thank you for that. And anyone else have any questions? Christy?
Thanks, Tim. I don't know if this is for you or maybe someone will jump in. So this is the personalized success plan, and then we're talking about individual learning plans as well. Those are 2 different things.
I think they're.
And they're.
It's,
Yeah,
it's one thing. We're calling it personal success plan at this point. And the reason being is Souhegan does a lot of the things that you can qualify as an individual learning plan or a personalized learning plan or pathway to graduation. And so we're working primarily with the 9th graders and thinking about how to set them up so they are able to navigate all the different experiences that already are in place and we're trying to kind of align it and house it in one area. And we have some various tools and resources that we might take advantage of. But right now, we're still trying to figure out and determine the most efficient and meaningful way to do it for kids and their families and their language, so they can use the school to become the version of themselves that them and their families want. And Souhegan already does a lot of this stuff, so it's just kind of fragmented and siloed, and our intent is to take this and kind of house it into one pathway. And Tim started in the logical work, and we say this, Tim started, we asked him if he would do this. Yeah, we'll do this, and he'll be kind of, is the ninth grade counselor working with Division One, it's going to align with the JLP and the graduation plan, and hopefully with the senior project and some other things that we do. And kids will access all those things as they matriculate through Souhegan. And that's the point, you know. And if it evolves, we're going to determine that as we work on that. That's where we're at right now.
That's it's exciting to see some groundwork on something that we've been trying to get going. I love that you're starting with ninth grade. I see you're going to roll them along and get the next ninth graders. Great.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Tim. I really like the idea for tying this all together, that Division One, that concept of getting thinking earlier on. I love it. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thank you, guys. I hit stop share.
Yeah, stop screen share would be great, and then you can rock it. If you hit the microphone button. There you go, nailed it.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is an update from Junior Council. Hey, what do you have for us tonight?
First, I have a little quick update. Our Souhegan Activities Committee has begun planning Pink Fest. That's exciting. And starting voting on things pretty soon. And then we've had one proposal working with the council, and it's the Democratic Reform proposal to change our voting system. So this proposal wants to change it to ranked choice voting with the goal of strengthening representation and preventing voting dilemmas such as vote splitting. And I believe the current plan is to highlight this form of voting, potentially with famous themes, just to see how it would apply to our school and how we could use it, and to make sure that everyone understands it. And how it would work with multiple winners, since there will be 5 reps likely. So it hasn't passed the council yet, but we're discussing it.
Great. Thanks so much. Things are always moving in community council. It's great to hear. Thanks so much. Okay, anyone have any questions for Maddie? You're welcome to stay, but if you want to go, you're welcome to go. Yes.
Maddie, were you in the pictures of the Souhegan River?
Yes, it was. Okay, can you tell us about that? Oh, yes, that was from my AP environmental science class. One of our labs was testing water quality. And so we went out to the Souhegan River, we put on our waders, got in the water, and collected data, and we tested a couple of factors, kind of like the temperature, pH levels, nitrate, phosphate levels, just to see the quality. And we didn't test every factor, but with what we did test, we found that it was surprisingly high quality water. It wasn't too bad, but we didn't test bacteria or anything, so I feel like that would definitely bring it down.
Don't drink it.
Yeah. Oh, no arguments when we get it.
That's great. Yeah, that's why we were fortunate here, I think, with the teachers' creativity and access to the environment the way we do, that you guys go out and do those things. So that's fantastic. Great. Okay, so moving on to reports received. Why don't we start with the December board report, which would be the principal's report. Anyone have questions or comments on that?
My one is, I noticed that there were in our listing for suspensions, there were 4 out of school suspensions listed, and I wondered if any of them got to try the program that we voted on. I know you can't share specifics, but.
So we are still waiting for the background check. So and what Adam has done
is going forward, we're gonna use the live scan versus the ink, which should make this turn around much quicker. But we have about 3 or 4 mentors in the queue that we're arranging training for and background checks. But the delay has been due to the delay of getting the ink background check in it. It is a very individual nature with the students. We have to make sure that everything goes. That's been the goal. And I'll add the most suspensions are in school. Our goal is to keep the students suspended. In school suspension, that's a tool we use. Out of school suspension.
Did I read it wrong? I'm sorry.
No, it just said suspensions. You didn't read it. I was just clarifying.
It said 4 hours.
4 out of school.
Yeah. And the 14, yeah, definitely if you're trying to keep most of it in school.
Anybody else have questions for Mike?
One, I like the principal's report. I thought the different sections were very informative. I enjoyed hearing about athletics and the Medina faculty and Medina students. The classes for missing athletes, it had a footnote that said the number of athletes in each sport was in the comments, and I never found it in the table.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know the form. So.
Well, I thought it was interesting, there were the gold and black, which one's odd and which one's even?
Gold is odd.
Okay. The most I saw was that the volleyball missed 6 black. It would have been their 8th period out of 23.
So I guess what Laura, the question I think it comes out of that is with athletics and our change in start time, is it something that next year the athletic director is looking at moving or is able to move any of the classes, or are we going to consistently see the number of students missing end of day?
I think you're going to see a concerted effort to not miss class time. And I think there'll be a variety of strategies used to not have students miss class. And the part of the NHIA, they build the schedules as a state organization. And then each local school district then has their calendar that fits to them. And so, and each sport is a little bit different. It'd be a lot easier for me. Most games would be Tuesdays and Fridays, and we can build off of that, and that would work out, right? But then when you make enough games, and you have different schools that have different transportation, it's kind of all over the place. And I'd love to tell you that predict what it's going to end up. We'll do our best to not have students missing school from when we build the master schedule, and what classes are offered, or what days we schedule games, and work within that.
Yeah. Is that where you're getting at, Laura? Because
Yeah.
I think the change in start time, I think that's the concern that we see when we see so many students are leaving early for games.
Right, it's not necessarily the minutes, it's the fact that they're missing the same minutes of the same class on the same covered day. So that affects them, it's disruptive.
It's an absolute concern, how we balance the value of sports and physical movement and that with the academic time. Laura, I agree with you, it is an absolute concern. They are moving some to more nights, but even then you have, right, the other end of things. But Mike's on it, Kelly will be on it, we're all looking at it. We'd like to make as many short trips as possible, to the areas as we can, limit transportation, time. But I'm with you. That's the most important thing we do is on that classroom.
Yeah. Great. All right. Somebody else. I'll make, I have a few comments. So one thing I just want to say is, thank you for the career training expo. That was interesting. I came into to see it, and it's basically on like your tech schools and being able to go, like, they had the police officers there, they had the fire department there, they had plumbers, electricians, they had the tech schools there. So those who may or may not be thinking of something other than a four-year school, they had the entire gym set up all the way around. And the kids, the 9th and 10th was geared towards the 9th and 10th graders. And they came in and they had basically had bingo cards and kind of get them start engaged and talking. It was nice to see them actually truly engaged and talking to the different groups. So that was great to see. And I saw a lot of 11th graders there too, who were asking questions and interested in. So it was a great opportunity for them. So thank you for providing that. And then I also want to say thanks for the mental health awareness presentation. That was a really good presentation. A few of us were here. I know many people were watching it at night, but they covered the youth risk behavior survey, but then really about what do we do in our school to mitigate the concerns and factors. And I thought it was a great presentation. It's out there as a recording for anyone to watch.
A lot of people doing good stuff.
We really do.
Like, just to echo a bunch, to take the grace from Amy Payson. I really appreciate your putting this discipline data and the approach. I know that was the top of the conversation, and it's nice to really to see it in here and give us some perspective on that. So I appreciate that work.
So I look forward to seeing the program of studies in January, our next meeting, which was part of the Dean of Faculty report. And did you miss? Bring up. For January.
Anything else? Anybody else have some questions? Mike? All right. One other, so the facilities report is on there, and there's also the treasurer's report. So any questions there? Again, Roger's here. I just want to say, Roger, thank you for all of your work in our facilities because it all makes it better. Oh, okay, so the next thing, the board staff communications update. So that was something we had asked Adam to look into, and Steve is following through on providing a date that we could have a coffee or breakfast, a little mini breakfast with the teachers, just to kind of one-on-one say thank you, appreciate the hard work, and you have a tentative date for that?
Yes, the Thursday following the summer break. Rick,
6, I think, is off the top of my head.
ding dang, you get a ding dang.
All right.
So we're looking at 7:15, 7:30, we'll have the times, but we wanted to make sure, see if that fit, but it'd be great to break bread and enjoy each other. And we've just, everybody before the holiday break is pretty hectic around the schools.
Yeah, really have another weekend.
I think you'll find a much more reflective group the first week after than you would. We'll make, my thing is
Yeah, yeah.
7:15, 7:30, Mike?
And some, I like some.
7:15.
And
Yes.
yes, it's when we can get the teachers and they're awake. It's mostly, again, this isn't for us to just say thank you and give a chance to sit down and talk. Personal skills, yeah. That's all.
Thank you for your flexibility, and we'll make it happen. Make sure all the invitations are there and all of those things.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. I had a request for the draft minutes to be postponed for approval until next meeting because not enough time to read through it all. If everyone is okay with that, we'll move them to next meeting. We'll be just stacking them. Any questions on budget transfers that weren't there? No. Secure front entrance. So Roger, can I ask you on secure front entrance? Is there something you would like to say specifically about that, or you?
No, we're just, we're ready to move forward with the design, because of the commitment of the, dollar amount. We just wanted to make sure that the board.
Just have the board.
Okay. Does anyone have questions on the secure front entrance? Because I know there were questions, and it's okay to bring up.
I thought Adam had mentioned that there was a slight change in the design from what was proposed,
Yes.
and that we might see it.
We have actually any drawings on the,
We do not have any drawings on the proposed design.
would you like to describe it a little bit more in detail for us?
Well, it is described in the scope of work, if we want to get into full details, because it is security, as just a moment to know.
Yeah.
If you need full
Yeah.
details.
I mean, the big difference, so when you were walking in the building, it was gonna be, we were gonna take over Mike's, the principal's office, and build out over that way, so people would never have to come into the school. But based on the funds available and the cost of building things now, we're talking about doing it on the right side and breaking into the guidance office, to be then be built out for like the welcome center. And kids can access that through the guidance department, and people can walk in the front door and talk to Maria there.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
sure. So clearly,
But it's through a window. That's one of the big changes. Is
So
you'll be talking through a window, not walking into the welcome center.
so you clearly live with this much longer than the rest of us who are just hearing this for the first time.
Yes.
Is this equivalent to, put on you, does this mean the goals you think we had?
So I mean, the goals are there. There were concerns that it wasn't the same open feel that it was originally. I think it was one of the things, because the window is now there, and I think the intent was there was going to be a window on the other side. It just wasn't in the drawings that were presented by the prior architects. And, so when you walk in the door, there's gonna be a window, you're gonna talk to Linda through, versus the big open space, which was a concern. So we wanted to make sure everybody understood that before we go forward and start breaking down walls.
So imagine this as an airlock. Linda
Yes.
is the gatekeeper in the airlock.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Timing is summer.
We can get started as soon as school is out, is the concept, and get the money committed. Since it's in this year's budget, we need to have it committed before the end of the year.
We have lead times on a lot of the materials as well, so I have to watch this on.
So what questions?
So I'm not opposed to having the entrance be fortified, but we have an open campus and we have hundreds of students every period, 100 to 200 students without a class that freely roam school. They sit outside. We just installed outdoor Wi-Fi and enhanced that for COVID, so our students could enjoy being outside more. It's just a little confusing to me, this one door, in this one location, when we have unlocked doors and we have glass walls and that's all.
That's a good point, I think. Maybe we should have a non-public at some point to discuss more comprehensively security matters. Explore more deeply what Laura's saying.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just say that we debated this extensively when it was first voted on. I believe the vote was 6-1 to proceed with it. I'm happy to see maybe some movement.
No, but the original drawing that we were shown had a door going into the administrative office. It was a different layout. It was just like a triage, having people go through rather than walk directly into the building. So.
I guess I would say, wasn't all of that part of security review? single out one item, you have to actually look at the entire plan. So you can't just look at it and say, well, it's just a security room that everyone's going on campus. You probably have to go around.
Yeah.
Right, very careful about what you
Yeah,
that's what we.
you start carving out
Yes.
particular items.
Yes.
It's not. You want to do that.
If we're talking our current situation with social security and our plan, I would definitely suggest non-public.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would suggest we do non-public at the end of this meeting to get this resolved. I'm sure Roger would like to commit
Yeah.
labor and material orders as soon
Because
as
we're running out
possible.
of time,
Yeah,
literally,
because-
because of how long.
Well,
we're waiting.
the world is running out of stuff, so we want to get our bit of it. So we should make it.
We're seeing the same thing.
One more question.
Yes.
So just replacing the doors alone, it's a double door system, how much would that run? Like 208,000? I know those doors are 30 years old and they need replaced, or they will benefit from being replaced to begin with. What, do you have any idea what that portion of this 208,000 is? Or-
It's actually all in the price breakdown sheet. There's a detailed breakdown sheet of all aspects of the project.
All right. So I think we'll hold off the rest of this discussion. We'll do a public at the end. Okay, the last thing on the consent agenda is policies for approval. So this would be the second approval and, of the minutes. Is there anything that should be pulled out for a question? Steve?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Please.
GBEBE, or as we affectionately refer to it on the policy committee, GBEB. That was discussed at PPC last week, and they have some concerns. So the board has two choices. We can talk about the concerns and roll ahead with a yes, no vote, or I would recommend pulling it and sending it back to policy committee before we vote on it.
I would like to hear what their concerns are, but yes, let's pull it and put it back to policy committee. So I'd like to hear what the concerns are though.
Yes, there's, so there's a certain, if that policy is implemented, adopted tonight, it would require, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, it requires the reassignment of a staff member immediately. It doesn't have a transition plan for a circumstance that prohibits happening in the future, but exists now. So we want to look at that and work on a transition, just language, so that no undesired side effect happens by implementing that policy.
Okay. Okay, so you want to send it back to policies?
Yeah, it just needs a little, a sentence with rework, but it wasn't the right place to do it at PPC itself. So.
Okay. So we will do that. What other questions are there on policies before we? Still struggle with. BHC, I have to say, I still struggle with the very last sentence. I don't know. Oh, 74? The last sentence says, therefore, discussions of personalities or personnel grievances of either party will be considered unethical behavior by the school board member and could cause a staff member to violate this policy. But if it's unethical behavior by a school board member, how is it causing, I don't know. I think it's either the school board member is violating the policy or the staff member has unethical behavior and violates the policy. The school board member does not have unethical behavior that causes the school board, that causes the staff member to violate the policy.
So there are two separate and parallel possibilities. They happen to be in the same sentence because they are triggered by the same circumstances, but they're not actually connected to each other.
And then it becomes a fireable offense to do with the behavior by the school board member.
where's safe harbor?
Doesn't, well, we're talking about unethical behavior,
There are no unethical behaviors by school board members in firing offenses.
and then we're causing the staff member to violate the policy. That's where my concern is it twisted. So it just, my interpretation of it, I don't, other than removing that sentence. I just think it's goes a little too far.
Steve, I mean, Stephanie doesn't do anything, and does the PPC have an opinion about this? It doesn't have a G policy per se, but it does touch on
That was not discussed at PBC. Unless they're watching our scintillating videos, they have no knowledge of this, or reading our fascinating minutes.
What is the consequence for a staff member violating this policy? It's not ethical. That's,
It doesn't say that.
it does say that. It says that we consider unethical behavior by the school board member. Oh,
Yeah,
That's.
so my unethical behavior could cause a staff member.
no. The discussion is a violation of policy, period. That's all.
What does that mean?
School, it means, tell me, Mr. Assistant Superintendent, how do we discipline staff members when they violate policies?
We give them due process and we follow our guidelines and implement them as
And proportional
correct.
interventions?
So there's a big range of how that could be interpreted and also how it would be reported. So if I am at a restaurant with a friend in town or something and they happen to work for our district and we two have a conversation, someone decides we were having a conversation with that people, but they weren't part of the conversation, they would be subjected to due process. Then
Someone
that's
filed a
uncomfortable.
complaint- Someone filed a complaint against someone, yes, we do.
And would that happen without that sentence? It seems to be more of a guiding policy until you put that sentence with the teeth in it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Interim Chair, I believe we reached a consensus on this new language at the last meeting. If there is discomfort, I suggest we pull it and have a vote on that individual policy rather than perhaps debate a thing which is only a concern to a minority of the board.
Okay. We can pull VHC for separate vote. Stephanie? Yeah.
I could motion to remove the last sentence of policy BH.
Okay,
Okay.
so Laura,
Is it being pulled for future discussion or would it be pulled to be discussed now? What's the path?
I think pull it, vote on the rest, then bring this one up, move it, take any amendments that are proposed and vote them, and then make a final decision.
Sounds
okay. So, are there any other policies besides GBEB, which is getting pulled, and VHC, which we're gonna pull off for separate vote?
Did Steve pull GBEB or GBEE?
Yeah.
EBE.
Yeah.
GBE.
Yeah, the E,
Yes, the extra E.
a five-character policy.
Okay. So, so we need to vote, first of all, we have the whole consent agenda to vote on. So why don't we do this? Let's vote on 1 through 5. I think think 6 we're gonna pull until we have non-public.
We pulled 1 through 3 already.
1, 2, 3, so 4 and 5.
Just voting 4 and 5.
Let's vote on 4 and 5, and then we're gonna pull, then we know number 6, we're gonna discuss in non-public, and then we'll tackle the policies next. All right, so for the consent agenda, we need a motion.
I'll move items 4 and 5 of the consent agenda.
4 and 5 of the consent agenda, second.
I'll second.
Second, do we have any discussion? Nope. All right, let's vote on 4 and 5 on the consent agenda for approval. All right, any opposed? Nope, okay, those pass. All right, 6 gets moved. 7, policies for approval. So DBEB, we're pulling BHC separate vote. So all the other policies that are listed, BBAB, BDB, BDF, BGD, EHAC, GBCD, GBEA, GBEB, KICL, EBBBA, BCB, BEDH, BIB, EBB, and that's all. All right, we could motion, does anyone make a motion to move those forward for approval?
I will make the motion to approve.
We have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on those policies? Yes.
Can you tell me where this is? I'm following our agenda.
Page is 55.
Well, not that, on our agenda. Is it on our?
Yeah,
That
it's under
policy.
policy
Oh,
for
seven. Thank
approval
you.
number 7. Yes. Yes.
GBEA, the ethics policy. I don't think it's enforceable, the way it's written.
Oh, 66.
GBEB, staff conduct. I really appreciate the work of the policy committee, but I'm a little frustrated when they simply call this to align with the code of conduct with style edits and clarification as to applicability, when in reality, that's how they describe the changes for GBEB. When in reality, the policy now is expanded from not just having credentialed employees with the code of conduct for New Hampshire, but having all employees to have the same standards as credentialed employees, which is a pretty big change. And it also leads the districts, it's not just the Department of Education's interpretation of the code of conduct, it's the district's interpretation of the code of conduct. So this policy gives the district more tools in their toolbox to remove employees based on their own interpretation. Which, if this is a policy we choose to pass, I can understand that. But I did want to complain about the policy committee, why they didn't communicate such drastic changes to the rest of the board that they're asking them to vote on policy. And I'm not supporting that particular policy for that reason. I'm also not supporting KICL. It basically authorizes spyware on anyone who accesses an SAU 39 network, Wi-Fi network for adults and minors. I'd like to see a firewall. I'd like to see firewall software do that and not spyware. And I feel very strongly about that, and I cannot support KICL for that reason. That's it.
I have a question about you said. When you're talking about spyware, is that listed in the policy, or are you talking about this technology protection measure?
It says that it designates the superintendent or designee shall ensure that all networks managed by the SAU 39 accessible to the public have a technology protection measure that prevents access to visual depictions of that are obscene or pornographic, and that the operation of such measures is enforced. So the spyware is used for the visual depiction.
All right, Laura, are you concerned that there's something getting downloaded to people's computers directly, or it's just working on the network level? If it's working at the network level, that's not spying. But if you think it's getting downloaded to someone's, like my phone, like my computer I'm sitting on now, that's different, but that's the question.
Well, when I asked questions in the budget process about Dalladeo, which according to their website sounds like spyware to me, I was told that yes, Dalladeo is installed and installing itself onto personally owned equipment when they log in to their SAU account. I am not a software person.
It's not on my computer right now because my husband scanned my computer.
Right, I am not a software person, but they themselves told me that this had happened on multiple events, and
so that's the concern is about Dalladeo software, but not the policy, right?
well, they're using the visual depiction to justify spyware.
Well, I think the policy talks to protections, but the software they're using is something separate that can be argued with the software.
Right, but when I asked about the software, we just analyzed other software that does the same.
Again, it goes to the actual software being used, not to the policy. The policy is one thing, what software you're using is a separate thing.
And it seems like, Steve, maybe you could address it. It seems that the policy is speaking to the network, not individual devices.
This policy exists because there are three kinds of people who use our network. There are students, there are staff, and then there's the great public who just comes into our building and happens to log on to the network. The policy for students and staff says this: they can't look at pornographic stuff, basically. There was nothing in the policies about what a member of the public wandering on the campus and on Wi-Fi signal. So this just replicates the same restrictions for all the other users of the network who aren't students or staff. That was the intention, and that's language was, I did it a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure it was pretty much cut and paste.
It's required by law, we must have.
Well, yeah, for students, we must have them. So it doesn't, the protection software we have doesn't differentiate who you are. It just says you're on the network, these are things you can't see.
So if I understand right, it is acting more like a firewall in this policy than it's a separate issue from whatever software is on kids' computers, things like that.
Ever since E-rate came, actually before E-rate even, and it was a concern of administrators when the internet showed up in schools that kids should not be able to see everything in the world that was on the internet. So these protections have been in place since the beginning. When E-rate came along, it became a federal law that we had to have them. We're taking federal money to support our network. A tiny piece of our network, but it's still. So, well, we could certainly allow the general public to view anything we want. I imagine it'd be a little difficult to configure the existing software to allow that. So this policy just gives the basis for what we do anyway.
Yeah, I think your concern is with the software being used.
Yeah, I'm
Which
certainly,
is different than the policy trying to put in place.
yeah, I am. Yeah, my problem is the spyware.
So we can argue about the software being used, which is different than the policy itself. Because it doesn't spell out the software being used. So your arguments with the software being used. Right?
I have a problem with the wording of the policy and the spyware. I would not, I'm perfectly happy blocking all porno and pornography. I have no problem with that, whether it's an adult or a student or minor.
So that again, that's means you have no problem with the policy, you have a problem with the software being used. So I would argue, keep your argument to the software being used.
That's okay, I can't support this policy in the way it's worded, because I think it supports the software and justifies it, that I cannot support.
I'm so sorry, I don't know if you want to go for it.
That's okay.
But technology protection measure, and an asking, I don't know, is that how would firewall fall under technology protection measure equally as well as spyware? Like, are we just talking about so in the end, it's talking about this, when I go on to SAU 39, I give them my email, I check a little box and says I'm gonna agree not to look at anything I shouldn't be looking at in school. It's my assumption that as soon as I disconnect from that, it no longer cares what is going into my phone. But I don't know how that's happening.
So firewall is the wrong technical term to use here. Firewalls do something else,
Okay.
but they get conflated with what's happening, which is content filtering.
Okay.
It's frequently you buy a single package that does both things for your network at the same time. So yeah, content filtering happens at the entry to the network, essentially. So spyware generally is taken to mean stuff that is placed on your individual device, not that happens in the network above your device. So this does not say anything about placing any software on your device to spy on.
And that's kind of my question, is that content filtering shouldn't require anything to go on a person's device. It should be stopping at the door of the building. And I'll say this, that, I'm sure you all are aware that on the back side of pornographic images and things often comes malware, which we don't want on our personal devices anyway, that holds things hostage, right? It becomes difficult, which isn't part of this policy, but would be an added benefit of that protection.
So, Steve, the questions that I asked during the budget process, the SAU said that when the certain people had logged into the SAU 39, that the spyware came onto their personal devices. I'm not a software person, I'm just.
That was the students, right?
If that's happening, yeah, certainly I log into the SAU network with a Windows computer, Windows PC, an Android tablet, an Android phone. Sorry, I don't live in the iPhone world. Nothing is, and I'm aware, I'm paying attention also, nothing's getting downloaded on my system. And I log in with my SAU credentials, so I get the same treatment any other staff member gets.
And we do know that did happen, or some kids that did find happen to their own PCs, and I understand that's been rectified, but I don't remember the details behind that.
If I remember correctly, it was turned on by the tech staff, not fully understanding the
Yeah,
circumstances.
they turned off.
And as soon as the word came in, it was turned off again.
Yeah.
So it was a brief period at the beginning of the school year. It was my memory of what Adam said.
I don't need to have a conversation.
So we
We
can,
can move on.
one last thing, and then we can answer Brian.
Is Steve a resident technologist here? Is there any
Old amount of data.
or anybody, just put this question out here. is there any reason why the prevention isn't audio and visual? That would have been helpful. Well, it would, for anybody.
That language has been around for a long time. I wonder if that's from the law, maybe, I don't know, who knows?
Okay, just curious.
All right. Anything else, or can we approve at least go through the vote of the others? Okay, can we have a motion to move forward the policies of in GBEBE and BHC for approval as a second read? Did we do that? No, we didn't actually.
This was the
Oh, wait.
further discussion on.
This is the further discussion.
Separate.
You're right, we've done. That's right, this is the further discussion. So now we just need to actually vote on them. That's where we are. Okay.
Are you gonna bring forward if those are approved?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. That is okay. So I don't have, how do you separate them?
Okay, can we have a raise of hands if you are if you approve to move forward the policies of the GBEBE and BHC? And opposed? One opposed. So we'll move those forward. So BHC. Do we have any motions on BHC? You want to move it forward for approval? And we can discuss.
I'll move it.
Steve will move. Okay, that's for motion. Who second? 10 seconds. Discussion.
So
Aye.
the issue is, I tend to agree with the concern because it's very broad, and I don't know who gets to interpret it. Discussions of personalities and personal grievances. I mean, how does that cut? What if as a board member and talking to someone at the grocery store or wherever, and they say, "Oh my gosh, I really love the new hire in the whatchamacallit department." Well, that's a discussion of personalities. They're just such a nice person, and they're always welcoming. Well, now we're discussing the personality. So by the letter of this, that would be a violation. Because personalities or personal grievances are separate items here. And that's clearly not the intent. This is to avoid disparaging comments, right? This is to avoid what? What is this trying to avoid? It's a rhetorical question. I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, if somebody comes to a board member and says, "I have a real concern about the way so-and-so is handling such and such situation," well, that seems consistent with the language above. It is expected they will informally discuss such matters as educational trends, issues, and innovations, and general district concerns. So there's intention in the policy right there. The first sentence says you can have kind of an open conversation with somebody about whatever is on their mind. And the last sentence throws a hammer down at everybody and says, "But be careful, or else face the consequences." And I don't know that that's smart policy making to have that ambiguity so embedded.
I'd like to motion to remove the last sentence from policy BHC. Therefore, discussions of personalities or personnel grievances by either party will be considered unethical behavior by the school board member that could cause the staff member to violate this policy.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion on the amendment?
I support the amendment, especially given even, does this go to a concerned townsperson who also happens to work at the school and they want to email us like any other townsperson can, you know, in an open way. I don't know, I just feel like there's not, the line is very fuzzy, what happens to people is very fuzzy, and it seems like it's not in the interest of just a general, regular, interesting discussion of district concern. I don't know.
I would hope that we as board members would be professional amongst ourselves and know where the line crosses and say, if you have an issue, we need to take it up as a grievance process and hopefully stop it. But I think this line just, it goes just too far. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, let's vote on the amendment to remove the last sentence of the social interaction. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? 5-4, 2 opposed. So that. Yeah,
5 in favor.
5 in favor. What did I say?
You said 5-4.
5 in favor, 2 opposed. So that amendment passes. So let's go back to BHC. And any last minute discussions, anything? All right, let's vote on the amended BHC. Those in favor? That would be 7, and opposed would be 0. Okay, so we've amended BHC. And those are all the policies for this season.
No, there's more.
Oh, there's more.
See your agenda.
Yeah, no, those are to be rescinded, right? So that comes to the next thing, rescinded policies. Steve, would you like to address those? Anything?
Yeah, so as I was coming in late, someone was trying to talk about policy GBK-R, and GBK-R should not be on this list right now. In fact, at the SAU meeting on Thursday, the SAU will see the proposed amended GBK, that GBKR would replace GBKR. So we put the cart before the horse here, we're rescinding before we adopted the new version. So
That gets pulled out.
also, GBEA also should not be rescinded yet, as its replacement hasn't been adopted either. Oh, is that true? Yeah.
Was that considered a first reading of this policy?
Yeah, the old. The GBA we want to, that is proposed for rescinding is staff conflict of interest. And that is being replaced by another policy that we haven't yet seen. So it also should not be rescinded yet.
So which ones are these?
GBEA, confusing because Souhegan has apparently managed to adopt some duplicate numbers of different policies. So we're talking about not yet rescinding staff conflict of interest, GBEA, from 1999, and not rescinding GBK-R, staff complaints and grievance procedure, from 1995.
Okay. So BG, BGA, BGB, BGC, ADD, JEC, JLI, and KHB would be still be rescinded.
Yes and no. Also, sadly, see, on list is GBK and GBKR.
Yes.
GBK needs to go.
Yes.
GBKR needs to stay.
Yes.
Okay. I thought I didn't hear you say that.
Yes. BGK.
Right. So it's the list except for GBEA and GBK-R.
Point of clarification in our, on our list here on page 2 GDKs.
Yes, there are. That old Souhegan has multiple.
Here it is again, so, to be specific, which GBK, one is staff conduct and ethics GBK, that's indicated in all 3 constituent districts.
1991 GBK.
Is that staff concerns, complaints, or grievances?
What page you on?
Page 84 has the chart, it doesn't say which one's which. There's staff conduct and ethics and staff concerns, complaints, and grievances. Looks like, it looks like staff conduct and ethics is associated.
Yeah. You'll notice on page 84, GBK, the letters GBK show up 3 times.
Right.
Yeah.
The first one is staff conduct and ethics that exists in Amherst, North Vernon, and Souhegan. That's
the one getting rescinded.
That's what get rescinded. GBK-R, which exists only in Souhegan, which we're not touching yet. And then GBK, which is to the new one, which is being adopted in both Souhegan and the SAU. It will replace the old GBKR. I had to write a separate memo on this to keep track of it all, which I have a copy of somewhere. No one wants to read it.
So the GBK that's getting rescinded is the staff conduct and ethics.
The best way to do this would have been to draw a picture, I think, but I didn't.
Yeah. All right. All right, so we at least need to make a motion to get this into the discussion. So let's make at least a motion to rescind BG, BGA, BGB, BGC, ADD, JEC, JLI, GPK, that's staff conduct and ethics, and AHB.
Yes, that is correct. I'll make that motion.
Okay, Steve will make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, now discussion. Any concerns or any comments about these that are going to be rescinded?
I'll just say, most of these need to go because we've now adopted their replacements, so it's time to get rid of the old ones.
And just to be clear, that means we're going to be pulled.
That's right.
Yes.
So 2 being pulled.
GDKR, as we just discussed,
Yes.
and GBEA, the other one.
The staff,
Yeah. the other one.
The 1999 version.
yes.
Okay.
All right, let's take a vote. Those in favor of rescinding the policies. That would be 7, 4 in favor, 7 in favor. It will get out of my mouth eventually. And any opposed, that would be done. Okay.
So I just say, this was a benefit of the policy season process that we've been in, that we wouldn't have got to otherwise. Forced to look at all these. Otherwise, we've had duplicate names for a while, and no one's had the courage to go into the rat's nest. That's right. It's right now.
Yes.
So we have finally
Thank you
sorted
for
it
getting
out.
through that rat's nest. Appreciate it. Okay, GBEB, B and GBEBD policy updates. Those are the ones we had asked for, have them taken to the lawyers, and we have not heard back yet, so we'll have to.
Apologies.
That's right. Yeah.
Since we're together as a board and we've waited 2 months to hear back from this, I would like permission to the board that I might approach the attorneys for these 2 and get feedback.
Can we have one last question to add? I'm sure he hasn't done it already and he's just not able to be here tonight. Let us know. And
Well, we have to vote on the board and that would way to get another one. So I would like permission if we hear back, like, to do it between this board meeting and the next board meeting, so we can have the policies ready when the next time we meet as a board.
We'll make sure.
can we just have an absolute, we're gonna hold Adams to the fire to get this done? rather than us going off on a separate money than when we might have already done it, if we've been reviewed. You see, my concern is that if we give you permission, then if Adam's already done, he's just not here tonight. We'll just hold his feet to the fire to make sure it gets done. That, you trust me on that? Does anyone else have a, like,
I would say that's the proper course. I appreciate your frustration with it being so long, because a lot of work went into those. I know you experienced a lot of that, and I contributed some, and I know Steve contributed some, Stephanie contributed some. I know that NHSBA contributed some, and I'm very much looking forward to the feedback from the lawyers. So to the extent I have any influence, I will lay it to rest with that as well.
I'll make it a point to connect.
we can appreciate your frustration. One way or the other, it will be on the next agenda to be discussed.
Hopefully in our hands to review prior to, so we have meaningful discussion.
Point well taken, thank you.
Okay, Lawrence Spalding Trust update.
So, well, it's in the packet. So as you may recall, the SU board set up the SU 39 Trust Fund Committee to discuss the Amherst School's use of the Aaron Lawrence and Isaac Spalding Trust. The committee met last month and has their findings. These were presented to the Amherst board at their last meeting as well. So the committee made a few changes to allow for a more open use of the funds in the schools. So they agreed that the funds will support professional development geared towards improving the quality of teaching and or school programs. And they will support the educational goals of the Amherst School District and Souhegan, but in the spirit of cooperation, as SU 39, the Mount Vernon schools will be invited to participate in them as well. So the funds are meant to pay for in-house or contracted educators to provide PD and or other training for staff, as well as the associated costs. The intent is to have the widest impact on educational professionals within the districts. They can be used for either a speaker to present to staff or for a consultant to provide job embedded coaching, mentoring, or other support. It is not intended to pay for attending salaries related to their time. Can also be used for the original intent which was to have a conference at the school. Typically that was done at the opening day for staff. What else can I tell you? So the funds will be managed by the superintendent or his or her designee responsible for curriculum development and PD. The Amherst trustees of the trust have requested that we bring forth the plan for board approval prior to the trustees releasing the funds. And the committee recommends that the funds are projected as revenue and expense for budgeting as they are now. So there's no action for the board. This is just to inform you of the update process that we went through, and any request for the funds as stated would come to the board for approval.
Yeah, good plan to be able to use the funds fully.
Christine is working on that.
Yeah, because this is, I want to say free money, but
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And
It's great, and it will be good to, we were advised by the trustees that we could increase the amount that would be available for interest income, so that is reflected in the FY23 budget.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Comments?
I just want to point out the dates in this memo.
Yeah,
The advantage of long-term planning and the original trust was set up in 1867 and has been providing benefits to students for what, 160 years, 150?
So it is remarkable.
It is.
And I also recognize that Jean's name was mentioned.
I saw that. Jeannie were in our packet.
I believe that Jeannie was the one who discovered that these funds were not being utilized.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
thank you, Jeannie.
So they haven't been benefiting the Amherst students for 100 and some odd years. There were
Well, there was a gap.
30 or so years where it wasn't being distributed all. But Aaron Lawrence got to me, told me.
Yes. She lives in his house, if you didn't know.
Yeah. He's very peaceful now.
Great, thank you so much for that update, appreciate it. Okay, on to our budget. All right.
Oh, hold on, I need to share screen on Zoom.
Multiple.
Okay. So, yes, so tonight I'll be presenting you with the revised budget, just to go over the review process that we've gone through so far and what our next steps are. So on 10/25, the board was presented with superintendent's proposed budget. We had a number of budget subcommittee meetings and questions submitted throughout the month of November. We had 3 school board budget workshops. And tonight, we'll be looking for the board to move the budget and warrant article and default to public hearing. In early mid-January, we'll have the public hearing on the 12th. On February 7th, we will have our deliberative session, and district voting will be on March 8th. So just a summary of the budget changes since the 10/25 presentation. On the actual budget, we eliminated the world language domain leader and restored the Spanish teacher. We talked about making sure we have some extra funds for increases in fuel. So we're looking to make sure that we can cover funds that are above the cap that we are required to pay above. We had a reduction in the SAU apportionment based on changes in the average daily membership and the formula, the information that was provided by the DOE. We added some kitchen safety measures. This was a knife sharpening service and some slip-resistant shoes for our staff. And we added a reimbursement for AP tests and dual enrollment tuition. So all of those, oh, and there were some other minor changes for a little under $500. So all of those changes from beginning to end result in a slight reduction in about $342. We also had a number of changes to the default. We removed the business teacher, we removed the athletic trainer, we made an adjustment for the world language domain lead, removal and Spanish teacher restoration. We adjusted for the salary change between the current groundskeeper position and the new proposed salary for that position. And we had an adjustment for the science domain lead salary in comparison to the existing science teaching position. Then there was a variety of other adjustments and corrections for about $35,000 for a total reduction in the default of $246,637. So this represents the new calculation of the default from FY22 to the default of $19,897,800. And it represents a negative 0.61% from the FY22 adopted. And that, just noting, that includes all articles in the FY22 budget. And a new proposed budget calculation. So as I said, the FY '22 default is 19,897,800. And the FY '22 proposed budget is 20,314,508, for a difference of $416,708 and a 2.1% increase. So the change from FY '22, which includes warrant articles, or all of the articles that were set forth in FY '22, and the FY '23 budget is a change of 294,405 for a 1.47% increase. And this just breaks down the budget by the advisory finance categories. So the difference from this slide shows the FY '22 budget without the warrant articles. So it gives you a comparison of operating budget to operating budget. So that change is 542,405 or 2.74%. And this slide shows the total appropriation comparison. So it gives an operating budget to operating budget change, the expendable reserve, or the capital reserve expendable trust fund that was put forth in FY '22 for 163. As we've discussed, the board is not seeking to request any funds for that in FY '23. As the original request was 26,000, although we were able to realize savings this year in the paving. So it's not necessary for us to request those funds. It was about a $30,000 savings, so it worked out well. The board has discussed and is looking to create a new expendable trust fund for the science lab renovations. And the request that has been put forth is $500,000. The turf field that was requested in FY '22 out of unassigned fund balance for $85,000. The board is also looking to make that same request out of unassigned fund balance. So a total appropriation comparison from FY '22 to FY '23 is 879,405 or a 4.39% increase. And here is a draft of the warrant article for the operating budget for the board to consider. That is a $20,314,508 appropriation and a default of 19,897,800. And here's a draft of the warrant article for the science lab renovation fund for $500,000. And this names the Souhegan Cooperative School Board as the agents to expend from that fund. And finally, Article 4 is the turf field replacement warrant article for $85,000 to be come from unassigned fund balance if available for transfer on July 1, 2022. And this is just a summary of the 3 warrant articles. That concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Yes. I think before we get into any sort of discussion, we want to hear from the Souhegan Finance Committee, so they have presentation. And the numbers are all in the spreadsheet, but we don't have the exact presentation yet.
Share it. Yeah. Go, Dan. It'll take me a minute to do this. Oh. Hold on. There we go. All right.
Do you have his?
Okay, do you want me to share I think you're gonna need to.
Because I think you're going to be sharing.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay.
And your password protected. Steve is the best.
All right. All right. There's the finance. Okay. All right.
My name is Dan Babe, I'm chair of the finance committee. Finance committee this year. Just want to start out by,
Dan, sorry, would you turn that on? So, yeah. Thanks.
hearing now.
You can hear.
I can.
Just want to start out by thanking everybody in this room for indulging us with all our questions, especially Amy, who I've been in her position before in the private sector, and I know it's a lot of long nights and a lot of busy days, a lot of questions you don't necessarily have the answers to, a lot of chasing down broken formulas, typos that completely mess up your budget, and people who don't know what they're doing, trying to put in things they should be putting in places they should put. And also like thank, especially Steve and Mike for putting up with a lot of questions from every individual member separately at times, and seeing a lot of logging answering the same question over and over again. The discussions were, if nothing else, comprehensive. Definitely beat the horse many times, but I think it was worthwhile. Good understanding out of it. If we can jump to the slide, the finance committee is made up of 7 people this year, appointed by the district moderator, George Bauer. We all come from different backgrounds. We're not all finance people. Many of us are writers and town officials and people who serve on the board or serve in other town capacities. Peggy Harris, Jeannie Luke, John Paquette, Christine Grayson, Joe Gordon, and Howard Brown all serve as our subcommittee. The key metrics, I think, will have to update because I'm not sure if they're exactly correct changes. One thing that it's still true that last year's budget, 2022 budget, still has $250,000 one-time bond project, and so that would have to be reduced to kind of have an apples-to-apples comparison between the two budgets. So that's the one part of that that we kind of want to point out. concerning metric for the next year or so is going to be the inflation. It's already affecting some of the things that we're trying to do, quality projects. When we look at the budget, we have 4 areas that we try to focus on. So we're not all over the place doing the things that maybe we have no business. We look at due diligence, which is, has every stone been turned to see where we're spending money the right way in the best possible. Have we gotten quotes for everything? Are we doing what we need to do? Fiduciary role is, are we protecting the resources of the town? Are we investing in the right places, not wasting money in the process? Consistency of vision, the state policies. Does the budget meet what we say we want to spend on, or what we want to do? And is it consistent with the Constitution? Those are things that may have changed over time, and maybe we need to look at bringing them up to date so we have a good basis. Our findings, it's a pretty reasonable budget, year-over-year variance is reasonable, and increase is minimal, justified. Budget addresses many of our top issues, such as restoring some of the staff facilities department. That helps with the condition of building, and what's been all neglected in some areas over time. Addresses pressing needs in various areas, kitchen equipment, building furnishings, and storage maintenance. Provides structural support for teachers intended to help improve student outcomes. The finance committee supports the core objective to improve student performance through classroom instruction. We support the domain leaders, which is one of the biggest money changes this year that was proposed. We support them as a subject-based instructional support role. The cost of domain leaders is fairly neutral. That next year. Instructional support positions is supported by research-based best practices. One of the things we look at. Domain leaders support the faculty. Domain leaders support the faculty will help build building administrators focus on maintaining culture of academic excellence, which Souhegan is all about. Our findings. We worked especially hard this year. As I said, we kind of beat the dead horse 7 times on the main leaders, and I think we came out with a good understanding of what they should be and why they're going to be there. That was an important part for us. We do have some areas of concern. The rate of change in the faculty. We have fewer students, so we should have fewer teachers. That makes sense, but we want to get a better idea of how that fits the changes kind of fit with the vision of having individual learning plans along those lines. One of the arguments for the winning years was decline in instructional proficiency over the past few years, resulting in inconsistent student incomes and outcomes. So we'd like to keep an eye on that over the next 2 years to see how they are doing, whether they're making a measurable change. We'd like to keep an eye on these are things that we would like the board to help. Teacher evaluations are another reason for the teacher evaluations haven't been done in a very long time. Having a plan on how the evaluations will be conducted by whom would be an important piece. Governing structure of the school appears to have driven away from principles that are in the Constitution. Two things don't necessarily back up anymore. That was already suggested we have a conversation about that at the beginning of next year for the 30th anniversary. It just gives a better roadmap by which to prepare the budget and make sure we're following a cohesive educational philosophy, and that it makes sense to the community, and
concerns we had about the leaders was could make it a kind of a top-heavy administration. Our next recommendation slide. This is something that was on, this is almost word for word what was on the finance committee's reports for the last 2 years. Just a strategic plan that says what the school will look like, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Just something that we can use to say, yeah, this is what the plan is, this is where the money is going, and it's consistent and it works, and it's something we've discussed and as a community, as a board, and we can all agree on. The subcommittee presentation is a pretty benign. Technology committee, significant change, reduction in technology, down 20,000 is a big hit for a year. Don't really have more of an explanation beyond that. Next slide. Athletics, the turf field and some of the extra spending on trainer. It's gonna bring up the budget a little bit. So there's nothing too drastic in this area. Food and transportation, some cost through the bus contract and for the ceiling for the surcharges. There was quite a large addition to the athletic transportation program, $75,000. Hopefully, next year COVID will be declining and we can not have to get coach buses to transport our students, our athletes. It was purchasing vehicles. Yeah, there's nothing very dramatic in any of this so far. Facilities. Roger Orchini had facilities, and she's very impressed with Roger and his plan for the facilities for the next couple of years. In anticipation of some bigger projects coming down the road, especially things like the science labs, other maintenance projects that are well needed by the school. Special education, it's driven by the students coming in. We don't have a lot of transparency in that area. It's covered by privacy and work with what we have. Curriculum is staying steady, which indicates that probably we're going to lose a few teachers next year. I think Joel said that there were 11 who are not coming back next year, 5 retirements, and 8 or 9 that are being replaced. So we're looking at, I believe, a reduction in force again next year. Again, Joel was the subcommittee chair for this. Suggests that having a good long-term plan would help us understand better lighting around curriculum. Administration, I don't think I'm going to talk too much about domain leaders because I think we've discussed it more than enough. But we definitely appreciate discussions and where we ended up. There'll be campus instructional support and supervisory role in the August. That's it, Gene.
Thank you. I want to say thank you you to the Souhegan Finance Committee. We spent countless hours going through the budget in detail and asking about every little thing they could think of. And many discussions of the land use to help us come to a consensus on the role of the mayor. So what we have left to do is what I just want to find out from anybody is we've gone through the budget many times, but I want to make sure everyone feels that their questions have been answered. So I just want to, if I say curriculum, does anyone have any outstanding questions, something that they're not sure of? I'm just going to ask on each one of these. I want to make sure we've covered it. Special education, any questions? Athletics? Or administration? Technology? Facilities? Or food service and transportation? I want to make sure we're, okay. If everyone feels like we're good, I just want to ask, Amy, the yellow, ones in yellow on the proposed changes after the 10-25-21 budget presentation. Do we need to vote on those yet, or do we just vote
You
on
guys
such as a
actually
whole?
can vote on the whole budget.
On a whole.
Just trying to send you guys my PowerPoints.
Okay.
But yes,
And-
I have too many things going on.
Okay, while you're doing that, Lauren, we have a question.
I just have one question. Did the board ever really discuss moving the athletic trainer to a full-time position? It's twice the price for our district. It doubles the price that we're paying for athletic trainer.
Versus the outside
Versus
contractor.
Which we've done for 20 years with the same company.
And just, we don't believe that it's possible to procure a contracted service any longer with in-house.
Are they closing? Are there other competitors?
What happened is they reassigned ours and left us without one. They couldn't replace it. But we use a third party and they reserved the right to place their staff where they think they need to place their staff. So they took our trainer who was here last year and reassigned that person to Nashville South.
And now we have nobody.
And then we didn't have anyone, and that was in the summer, and then we were able to come up with a plan for this school year, and then we budgeted accordingly, so we don't find ourselves in that spot. That's kind of.
Good question.
I appreciate that effort. I think it's and Dan's effort. I think it's consistent with our culture. If that's an important position, then you should be here on our payroll. We've been doing that with special education, and we're doing it with athletic training. And I think in the long run, we're going to save a lot of money and get a lot more of the value for that person being in our sphere.
Yeah, I think the plus is that they're gonna be here more than just the contractors who are around pretty much on and off. So, good question. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we need a motion to move the budget to approve it for the, how do we word this, Amy?
So I'm trying to get it back up. It's not working.
We're rolling for a while.
I know.
Just say that
And like
for the record and public benefit, as Amy presented, we had 3 public budget workshops to go over a lot of its details. So if you're at home wondering why we're not picking it apart, it's because we've already done that work.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that meeting with each of the departments and then Souhegan Finance Committee going through everything.
The right thing there must be.
So I have it shared on Zoom, but I can't seem to get it up there. But, yeah, we would,
Maybe we need some more of the technology budget.
but yes, we would be looking to move the operating budget in the fall. So warrant article 2 to, the public hearing, as well as article 3.
We're gonna do those separate. I just want to make sure we cover those.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I'll start with the motions if you want.
please.
So I move that we approve 2 is word and presentation. And since it's all boilerplate except for 2 numbers, I'll say the 2 numbers.
Okay.
Proposed operating budget of $20,314,508 and default budget of $19,897,800.
All right, so 10 seconds. Any discussion?
I was looking at the presentation, what did you have for
The numbers?
could you,
So want me to say the numbers again, or?
the FY 22,
Oh, we don't say that.
We're not voting on FY 22. This is just FY 23 budget and default.
Default,
And
okay.
article, yes.
Article 1.
Article, sorry.
Two, sorry.
Yeah, one.
Sorry.
Officers.
Opposite this, sorry.
Are you okay? Or you want to repeat it?
If you got on the screen, slide 10. Moving, you approve it.
okay.
You're good? Okay. All right, let's take a vote. Those in favor of moving the amounts stated by Steve Coughlin forward to Article 2, warrant article. I'm not sure if it's
The operating budget.
The operating budget, thank you. Those in favor? Any opposed? All right, it is 7-0. The next would be a special warrant article. We're going to do 500,000 for Supreme Court for the science labs.
Stephanie,
Yes.
sorry.
You're opposed to the budget?
Yes, sorry. I didn't say that.
Oh,
I was confused.
okay.
I'm sorry, Danae, can you change that to 6-1, please?
So then warrant article, the special warrant article 3 would be adding $500,000 for science labs into a, what's the proper term?
It is the Science Lab Renovation Expendable Trust Fund.
There we go. Again, this is our first amount to put into trust fund, so we can get an exact plan over the next year, or closer to an exact plan, so we know how much the science labs are gonna cost. We know it's gonna be probably around 1 to 1.3 million, we're just not sure of the exact amount, but we need to start putting money away in order to improve the education for our students. Right now, there's classrooms that are not big enough, and therefore they don't have the equipment in order to provide a full education, full curriculum for our students. So we want to make sure we can renovate the labs and be able to do this. So we would like to start putting money away. Any questions? Maybe we should motion first. Let's see. You want to make a
I guess I have a question. I'll make the motion first if you want.
Sure.
Unless John wants the glory.
No, go right ahead.
And then we'll get to the yes.
Who's the motion maker?
I move we approve Article 3 for the public hearing, Science Lab Renovation Fund, to create a Science Lab Renovation Expendable Trust Fund for RSA 188:20-C, Roman 5, for the purpose of renovating the Science Lab at Souhegan High School to raise an appropriate sum of $500,000 to be placed in the fund, further to name the Souhegan Cooperative School Board as agents who spend from the fund.
Thank you. We have a second. Pam. First. Okay, discussion.
There's two questions. One is, maybe Amy can answer these. It's a expendable trust fund for the lab renovations. We're gonna put some money away, and that was Stephanie was saying, that's not enough to cover the cost. This gets us well started. And then flash forward, the science labs are done, and there's $250,000 left in the expendable trust for the lab. Is there an easy way to either take that money out, either give it back to the taxpayers or appropriate for some other purpose? And the corollary question is, because it's called the laboratory Renovation Trust Fund, Expendable Trust, does that restricts future boards' abilities to spend it on other drains?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
So this is very.
that's good,
yes.
but if we overestimate, or Roger does his magic and saves us $1 million, then are we stuck? Not that we wouldn't be able to maybe use it on laboratories elsewhere in the facilities.
So it would require a vote of the public body to repurpose the funds. You could put it to a different fund, or you could put it back to the taxpayers, but because this is for a specific, it would require a vote of the public body.
Okay, and then if there were other, because there's not the only labs.
No, there, no, over, yes,
Those are the high need,
Those are the
but
high
but
need
in
ones.
5 years from now, there may be another need.
yes, in the main building.
It could also be used for other labs on campus.
Science,
Science
In
labs.
science.
Yes,
Science
labs.
So this is restricting the use what the public body is going to vote.
Right,
Yes.
good, okay, great.
Yeah, this was a suggestion from the Souhegan 2.0 joint for JPAC, yes. To put it into a separate warrant article to make sure it didn't just go into the capital maintenance fund and could be used for anything, so. That's why.
So I seem to remember back when we Zoomed these meetings, we had an informative session from the trustees of the trust fund. And they drew some clear distinctions between expendable trusts and capital reserve funds. And my memory of this, coupled with my experience as town moderator, suggests this should be a capital reserve fund, not an expendable trust fund. So that's my question to Amy.
Yes, and I can do some further research and make that adjustment prior to public hearing if legal counsel advises. My understanding was that there's very little difference from a legal standpoint and that the expendable trust funds are preferable. But I'm happy to do more research and make that adjustment to this warrant article. Actually, prior to our public hearing presentation.
So January 3rd, we
Yeah.
have a prep
Yeah.
for, do we want to hold off the vote
No,
until?
as we can certainly vote to amend
Yeah, okay.
at the summer. I'll just say that I agree with what you said, Amy, but the trustees of the trust fund seem to draw clearer and brighter lines than our
And I think
understanding.
they put it in a memo too
Yes.
last year, so I
Okay.
can go hunting for that memo.
All
I
right.
know exactly where that memo
Oh,
is.
good, that would be helpful.
Yes.
But I will certainly have, our legal counsel will review these anyway. But I can get that done earlier so that we can have that answer for
We
the
need
third.
to make sure it works with the trustees of trust fund, otherwise we'll put our money in and we won't get it back out
Yeah.
again.
So in addition to legal counsel, I will reach out to them as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Does that make sense for everyone? Okay, so then let's vote on the warrant article 3 for $500,000. Since we've had discussion, any other discussion, no more? Let's go ahead and put a vote. If those in favor of adding 500,000 to special warrant article for science labs? Any opposed? No, none opposed. So the last warrant article is the $85,000 for the field maintenance that we would take out of the unassigned fund balance. Similar to what we did last year. So let's have a motion to make that warrant article. Steve, you have a wording on that?
I'd be happy to read the wording.
Excellent.
I move that we approve Article 4 turf field replacement warrant article. To read as follows: shall the Souhegan Cooperative School District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $85,000 to be added to the Souhegan Recreation Revolving Trust Fund, previously established in March 2016. The sum is to come from the June 30th, 2022. Unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2022. No amount to be raised from new taxation.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
George is a second. You gotta go just ahead. Any discussion? Yes.
You know, like this, Joel, so this is part of a multi-year plan to ease into this, so it's not a huge burden all at one time. I wonder if maybe it's already on your radar, but as we get prepared for our public hearing, could we get an updated number as terms of how much revenue the turf field has brought in this year and added to last year, and see if we revise those numbers?
Yeah, we'll have that as a slide. for
We'll have
each
that as
video.
a slide.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then also, I know we're in year two, I think it was maybe a 5-year plan. I wonder, I don't know if it's too early to ask Roger to see if our estimates are still good, with the price of things going up. We had this range before, if anyone remembers, it was as low as a quarter mil and up to like $1.25 mil. And somebody settled on maybe 300,000 as a median number, and I have no idea where that stands today.
Yeah, so maybe we can ask Roger over this next year, when we come up to next year's
Yeah.
budget, to just do a quick review and make sure, because if costs have increased significantly, we make sure we're still on
Maybe,
track.
maybe we need to ask for 95,000. You know what I'm saying? Keep us on track.
I'm sure the treasurer would like me to point out that the balance in revolving account is reported in treasury report every month, so it's in your packet, right? Right now, as of October 31st.
Yes. Yes. Any discussion? All right, let's take a vote on, this would be the, what, Article 4?
Yes.
Article 4, for the field maintenance fund for $85,000. Those in favor? Any opposed? It passes 7-0. And that is everything on the budget. Yay.
Thank you, everyone.
So I think our next meeting would be January 3rd to just do any public hearing presentation preparation. So if anyone has a desire to present any part of the budget, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to say yes. But we can maybe at least have we'll come, Amy and I can sit down and come up with a sketch outline at least. And so we can, when we sit down, we can go through that meeting.
For the public hearing. Yeah, so I have a draft already, so, and we're gonna sit down and go through and make sure we're capturing what was captured from last year and anything new, and so we can be, as productive and efficient as possible on the ground.
All right, so that is the end of this part of the meeting. There's a second public input. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Make sure you press the button.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Lisa Eastland, 19 River Road, Amherst. I just want to speak really quickly about the proposed expenditure for the new secure entrance. I went and did some quick looking at some data to try and help make my decision, thinking, is this good or a good decision or not? So I went to the government and county office. And in the letter that I ended up sending to Danae, there's a link to when they looked at the last 10 years of school shootings from the 2008-2009 school year to 18-19. And they found that half of the school shootings were committed by current or former students. The other half were by parents, teachers, staff, or people that were unrelated to the school. Of those, 61% of the school shootings were outside of the building. They found that suburban and rural, wealthier and lower minority schools had more school-targeted shootings, and that most were fatal and most commonly committed by students. The GAO looked at those things and said that, sorry, I did some editing while we were doing this, so skip forward. You are looking at spending a chunk of change on renovating the front entrance to make it more secure and reduce access to the main portion of the building upon entry. With the design that I have looked at or been talked to about, a person may get buzzed in, but then still has free range of the building. Unless we implement an escort requirement, this new entrance doesn't change that problem by very much. As a side product, I am concerned and wonder if an incident were to occur, how would the person who let the perpetrator into the building, basically live with themselves after that? We're all here because we care about the Souhegan community, keeping it safe, and I understand from a liability perspective, this renovation is important, but I'm wondering if the money proposed might not be better spent on increasing our staff who are here to help with our students' mental and emotional health and conflict resolution within this district and the Amherst School District. At the very least, I ask, while you are considering spending money on this entrance, you also give good thought to hiring more staff who can directly help the kids, which may be our actual best option of keeping everyone safe. Oh, I know what that was. 31, the GAO found 31% of the school shootings that happened were over conflict or fighting, which is why I brought up at the end, hiring more people that can actually help the students manage those things, and then may not be. Thank you.
Jeannie Luke, 3 School Street, Amherst. I'd just like to share some background information with you all about how the community council came to the conclusion that a secure entrance was important. We did a year-long study, and this was, I guess, about 3 years ago. Feels like yesterday, a long time ago at the same time. There were many, many measures included on that list, some of which have been put in place, some of which continue to be on the list. Having a secure entrance is just one piece of providing security. It's not the be-all and end-all, and as many of you pointed out, we still have a lot of holes, places where people can get in. But I think it's important to, because we're not the only ones, the community council at the time, the security committee, we're not the only ones that recommended that. We also paid a company to evaluate security at Souhegan, and they too recommended a secure entrance. Some of the other things that needed to be in place or need to be in place that Lisa referred to are things like programs to avoid bullying. Things like Just Say Hello, which are part of the Everytown gun violence group that are school related. Making sure that our SRO is located in a place where he or she can watch students go in between 2 buildings. And there are a whole host of things that need to be added. Secure entrance is just one. So I just want to make sure you had that information before you all met. Anybody else?
You press the button again. Sorry, the one down is closer for you. Yes. Yes.
I'm Tiani Coleman, and I have a junior in high school, and I have a son who's a freshman in college, who graduated last year, and a daughter who graduated in 2017, and 2 other kids, one in middle school, one in the Wilkins, who are going to be coming up, so we've had a lot of interest in that. It's a Souhegan. So it was good to hear all of this tonight. I'm here today probably belaboring a point that none of you want to hear about anymore, so I apologize for that. Some years I watch, I pay attention to college football a lot more than other years. And this happened to be one of the years that I was paying a lot of attention. And so just very recently, we saw some instances where, there were some coaches who were, doing really well, and other coaches who weren't, and they were getting rid of some coaches, some were retiring, and so there was a lot of coach turnaround, and they were changing coaches. And some of the coaches who were very good and being sought after, they were getting offers at better schools. And when their current school found out about that, they quickly did everything they could to retain them and keep them and keep that good coach. And so of course, I'm here to talk about the Carl Dunleavy situation again. Just that I'm very disappointed that there wasn't more work done to try to retain him longer term. I'm very happy that he's back and the kids are much happier. And I don't know exactly, who played the biggest role in helping make sure that happened, but if it was any of you, thank you very much. And I also don't know any details behind the scenes as to, exactly why this agreement was made that he's going to be leaving next year. But I do know that I think it's very important for a district to try very hard when they have someone who's really good, a top coach, a top music director, that they would do everything they can to keep them here as long as they can. And I also think it's very important for a district to honor their teachers who have been here for a long time. They're still doing a good job. To want them to be here for their retirement, to stay here all through their retirement if they can. That's like a celebration to be able to celebrate these teachers who have been here for a long time, who've been a very important part of the community, important part of the school. And so, it's just a really sad thing when they leave and aren't here through their full career, if they're willing to and want to, which I think he was. Maybe now he's leaving, but I don't think that was ever what he wanted when he started this year. He wasn't thinking he wanted to leave. So, so I'm very sad about that. I just wanted to say how important that is. And I also came to the meeting tonight not really aware of the policies, haven't had time to look into it carefully or read them. And some of them that were brought up tonight were concerning. And I want to say thank you to Ms. Taylor and some of the others of you who pointed that out, who voted to remove some of that and to hold off, others of you who decided to hold off on adopting some of those. I think it's very important that we look very carefully at things and are very careful of our wording and careful of what we do. We want to make sure that we have the kinds of policies and procedures in place that are going to protect transparency, protect the ability for people to feel like it's an open place and not too administratively top heavy and not the kind of thing that creates an environment of a place where people feel like they're always at risk of losing their jobs or something like that. So thank you for that. And I think I'm going to try to pay more attention if I can. We're all very busy, so I appreciate all that you do because, most of us can't come to meetings all the time and stay late. So I appreciate all the work that you do. And I think it's important that all of us put in as much as we can to try to keep this school a good school. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public input?
Ms. Coleman, I'd first like to thank you for
Introduce yourself.
my name is Rolf from River. I'd like to thank the board again for all the changes that we made today. I find something concerning, and I really appreciate the work of somebody else to make sure that was clarified and that was cleared up. I would also like to invite you all as the band community, so we can be very thoughtful with it. I'd like to invite you all to the winter concert that they have on December 15th. I'm not a member of the board, I'm not a member of the band. I don't have any association with them, but I think that you guys should know because that's a really great way to show solidarity with the band community, especially with what they're going through right now. In regards to that, I'd like the communication that was made to the public on October 29th, stating that that choral had resigned. I'd like that to be corrected. It is general consensus with the community that was not true, due to statements that were made by the superintendent during the band teacher meeting, I believe a few days after.
Anybody else? No? Okay. One thing the last thing, then we're going to go into non-public. And the SAU meeting, I believe Adam is going to be addressing any school security issues. It was brought up by a school board, and it would be great for us to discuss just based on what happened recently in another school, not here in our district, but elsewhere, that we want to make sure the public understands that we do have policies in place, we have people in place, we have groups to reach out to make sure our students are kept safe. So that'll happen at the SAU meeting on Thursday. And And that is all we have for this evening, so we can have a motion to go into non-public based on RSA 91.832C and I.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second. Second from George. And, vote from everyone to go away.
Yes.
Did you say which vote for everyone to go away? Yeah.
Oh, we're part of everyone, aren't we?
So was this or I a lot of people are like saying, asking us like, is there a live stream for the meetings, being live streamed somewhere?
I think it's just recorded.
Okay. All right.
It'll be posted tomorrow.
Okay. Are we gonna move away from that or and go back up? Because that's what you.
I'm not sure what plans, but tonight we're talking with the administrative assistant.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what?
Thank you, everybody, for. And just. Okay.
I like how it was.